Thank you for joining us on today's session on RMA, or Return Material Authorizations. I'm Steve from Orchid, and for those of you who don't know us, first of all, an introduction to ourselves, to our suite of modules, and then we'll get stuck into RMA. So we have, at this stage, over 5,000 Sage 300 sites running our modules in over 60 countries, and we have an average of 2 modules per site. We have over 400 business partners actively deploying and supporting our modules around the world, and we're all about improving efficiency and productivity. I think you'll see that when I run through at a high level what each of our modules do and which areas they slot into. We're based in Sydney, Australia, and over the years we've picked up over 10 industry awards as a result of our development efforts and our work in the Sage community. We have 13 integrated modules which have been developed in the Sage 300 SDK, so they have the same look and feel as the rest of Sage, and they have make use of all Sage's security capabilities, admin, common services, and the like. The advantage of this is that they are then easier to support because they all sit within the same environment, and from a learning perspective as well, they all have the same look and feel about them, making new modules, Orchid modules, easier to pick up for existing users. We've been in business for 25 years. This year is our 25th year. We started at the beginning of 1993. So our modules fall into 5 separate categories. They fall into the categories of collaboration and intelligence, which includes Info Explorer, Notes, and Document Management Link. Info Explorer is our simple BI tool, and I'll be running through elements of that today because we do have a number of cubes for it, which allow you to analyze RMA data and keep on top of it at all times. So towards the end, I'll be running through elements of that with you. Notes and Document Management Link work in a context-sensitive fashion, delivering additional information to users around Sage 300. And these are useful for RMA as well. If, for example, you need to keep additional documents associated with any RMA, you could use Document Management Link to associate documents with specific RMAs, and you could then share them across your Sage 300 users via the Document Management Link module. We have automation and productivity, which consists of process scheduler and report runner. We have tailoring your system and integration, which consists of extender, data views, and optional tables. Extender here would be a natural fit for RMA in terms of keeping on track of outstanding RMAs and alerting users to the fact that RMAs are in a particular state or have been in a particular state for too long. So you could set up Extender to alert users to this fact, and Extender could keep a track of this in real time. The next area we have is streamlining financial processes, and here we have EFT processing, we have inter-entity trade, and we have inter-entity transactions. And the last area we have is operations management, which includes RMA and bin tracking. Bin tracking revolves around keeping a track of inventory at the bin level within Sage 300 locations, and works very well with these barcode scanning tools out there, or modules out there. And RMA is our focus for today. So RMA was originally developed in 1999 and 2000, so around about Y2K. And the other day I was actually cleaning out some drawers in the office, and I came across one of the original specs, and it was dated 5th of January 2000. And over the years, What we have done is we have added additional functionality to RMA to cater for people's requirements. So as I go through it today, you'll see the extent of the functionality that is now built in as a result of feedback from both end users and Sage business partners over the years. RMA, in case some of you are wondering, Sage has or had an RMA module. It is in fact our module. RMA was OEM by Sage for many years, and 3 or 4 years ago we decided alongside Sage that it would be better if we had it as an endorsed product, still sold by Sage, but back under the Orchid brand. So during all this time, we did develop the module and enhance the module, and we continue to do that to this day. So back to RMA. What is RMA all about, and in what circumstances would you consider RMA for your customers or for yourselves if you're a user of Sage 300? These are some of the qualifying questions we would be asking people, and they'd include: do you need to manage the return and or repair of physical products? What we can do with RMA is not just manage the return of goods and the issue of or replacement of products, but we can use it for simple repairs, and we can invoice those repairs if it's a chargeable service, and of course do it at no charge if it's under warranty. So this is an area of RMA that doesn't usually come to front of mind when thinking about RMA, but often with the returns process, what you're doing is you're actually repairing a product and returning it. So it doesn't have a very deep functionality in terms of scheduling repairs and the like, but it will keep a track of these repairs for you, and will draw down from inventory if you do need spare parts, and does allow you to add labor lines in the form of miscellaneous charge lines should that be required. So another question would be, are your customers suffering from poor service, and are you losing money through excessive stock write-offs or unrecovered repair costs due to poor item tracking and error-prone manual processes? If RMA is all about improving customer service, to give you an example of what happened to me recently, I purchased online a number of chairs, and these chairs required self-assembly, and when I opened one of these chairs, not all the parts were there, and it took 5 communications with the supplier to actually get these extra parts. And every time I called or got a response from an email, it was clear that the person I was dealing with had no idea of what had happened with historical communications, even though I gave them the invoice number, my customer number, and the like. It was clear to me that they didn't have any form of RMA and product, and they weren't keeping a track of existing requests for return or for replacement. And as a result, it took a couple of months for me to get the additional pieces I needed. And although I was quite happy with the product overall, I won't be going back to them to order additional furniture in the future just due to that poor service. One of the good things about the whole RMA process is it is an area where you can shine in terms of customer service. It is an area where customers are generally unhappy, and if it is dealt with quickly and accurately, then they'll be more inclined to come back to order more goods and services. And particularly in today's environment, where more and more things are being ordered and supplied via the internet, RMAs are becoming increasingly important in the whole process of selling goods. So what if you could track returns and repairs accurately while improving customer service through consistent processes supported by configurable workflows all from within Sage 300. So RMA is all about automating and simplifying the management of product returns and repairs. It's geared around improving customer satisfaction, reducing turnaround times and returns, and increasing the accuracy of inventory. It's all about ensuring cost recovery and minimizing losses by accurately tracking and billing repairs. All of this results in improved cash flow, improved stock turnover, and focus on quality with fewer write-offs. One of the key features of RMA is keeping a track of why items are being returned. Do we have a QA issue? Do we have a training issue with some of our key customers? How can we reduce the number of returns? It's geared around avoiding data redundancy, duplication, rekeying and checking, and this serves to save time and reduce errors. And lastly, what it's doing is minimizing the cost of the returns handling process. RMA is all about keeping a track of information relating to your returns before committing any financial information to your Sage 300 module implementation. By that I mean you might be recording a return. A customer might be phoning you saying they want to return something. You might send them a return instruction advising them how to do this, and there would be a period of time while you're waiting for that return to come in. Once it's come in, you may need to go through some QA and authorization process. And during this period of time, there shouldn't be any update of the financial information within Sage 300. You shouldn't update your inventory. This item doesn't belong to you, but you need to keep a track of the fact that you are holding information or a goods and services, goods rather, belonging to other people. And you need to keep a track of the fact that certain items are expected to come in. It's only at the point where you have authorized that RMA and decided to process a credit note to receive the inventory back into your system, along with a replacement order in order entry, or indeed a return back to your suppliers via a purchase return. It's only at that point where Sage 300 will be updated from an inventory and hence from a financial perspective. So what we've done with RMA is tried to keep it as close to the order entry module as possible in terms of look and feel. So the main screen, which you can see there in front of you, revolves around looking like the order entry screen, because we figured that the operators operating RMA would probably be the same people who worked with the order entry module. It does give you additional capabilities. You can do a lot within RMA, and this is all controlled through templates or transaction types, which I will be running through with you in some detail. So what you can do is set up a lot of defaults so that the RMA data entry process is quick and easy. But at the same time, it does give you a lot of power to create new documents in different areas with different information and doing it in particular ways. So for those more complex returns, what you do have is a great level of detail of and control that you can exert on these returns should it be required. So looking at the workflow in the bottom right-hand side, it's all about entering the RMA and then at the appropriate times having RMA create the credit notes, the replacement orders, and the vendor return should that be required. I mentioned earlier on that what a lot of RMA users do is they use the Orchid's Info Explorer module to analyze where RMA is at any point in time, so that we can ensure that the workflow stages that they go through are dealt with in a timeous fashion. but we can also use it to analyze why returns are coming back. Do we have items that are a fault and need to be addressed from a QA perspective, or do we have customers who are returning an undue amount of inventory in certain areas? Do they need additional training? And within Info Explorer, we can display different views of this information to users and have them analyze and slice and dice this information to ensure that we don't end up in situations like I described I was in not too long ago, where I'd been waiting for replacement parts for a considerable period of time. Towards the end of the presentation, I will give you an example of these. And one of the key things about Info Explorer as well is the ability to drill back down into Sage 300, into the relevant screens. So not only are you able to analyze the data and see where you have anomalies that need to be looked into, but you can act on them immediately. So let's go through and have a look at RMA itself. So I have here Sage 300. I'm running version 2018, as you'll see from the new look and feel. And RMA sits within the menu, just like any other Sage 300 module. And the key area that people will be working on is the return material, the RMA entry screen, which, as I said, is very similar to Sage 300's order entry module. And what I have popping up here are notes module, which allow you to display context-sensitive information to the end user and allows the sharing of information from any Sage 300 screen or any third-party product screen that has been developed in the SDK. So what I might do is just close that, and I will just close the tray so those don't appear again in future. But just as that one popped up there, our document management link module can also show pertinent information in the form of documents for any screen and any data within that screen. So by way of example, what I'll do is pick up Ronald Black, and what I'll do initially is just do a quick RMA and show you how quickly and easily we can do that. And after that, we'll go in and do something more complex, and I'll give you an idea as to how each RMA can be fine-tuned, and indeed every line on the detail line on the RMA can be changed to do different things. And after that, we'll go in and have a look at the setup of templates and item return policies and the like. So what I can do, I'll initially do a return here. So I do have a number of transaction types in the form of returns templates that have been set up over here. And at this stage, I'm going to choose the one that's been set up called RET. And as you can see down here, it's already created a miscellaneous charge line for me, and it will be creating a restocking fee that can be calculated automatically depending on the setup. From here, what I can do is go ahead and start entering the data. You may have a return that's come back from somebody who is not a customer. So you might be selling to retailers, the retailers may be selling on to the consumers, and the consumer might be sending the product back, in which case you wouldn't be picking this up off an existing OE invoice, you'd just be entering the return information. And that's what I'll do in this case, is just pull it off an existing invoice. But what I can also do is get to this information via serial and lot numbers as well. So these are your serial and lot numbers within Sage 300. So let's pick up an OE invoice, and I'll just pick one of these. And what I'll do now is just pull the data in off the original invoice. So it's gone off to find that invoice and is now expanding that. There are a number of invoices here, and you'll notice that the quantities have all come through as 0. And I'd specifically set it up to work that way and not populate all of these items with the original quantities from the invoice. So what I might do here is say we're returning one of those and one of those. And these ones over here, let's not, these aren't coming back. These are all good. So I'll delete those 3. And that's it. That's all I need to do at this stage. So if I now go off and add that RMA, it'll give me the opportunity to print an instruction, and I'll do that. And this instruction could then be sent off to the customer, explaining to them how the goods should be returned back to the warehouse. That could also be emailed as well, and we do have email templates to accompany the return instructions or RMA forms, where you can then insert merge codes and the like to provide personalized, relevant emails along with the associated forms sitting behind that. So what we might do now is have the products come back, and at this point here I might say, well, yep, they've come back, they look okay. Let's deal with it by creating a credit note, and in this case they want a replacement good, so we'll create a replacement order as well. So what I can do is go off and then create a credit note, and it'll go through to order entry to do that for me. And once it's completed that, it will then update the screen to reflect that so that I can drill into that credit note should I wish to. And I'll then do the same thing on the order entry side. I'll create a replacement order. So there the credit note is. It's now appearing up here. And let's go ahead and create a replacement order. Now the replacement order and credit note, we can have multiple replacement orders and multiple credit notes. Some returns may be quite big, might result in a number of shipments or receipts coming through to the warehouse or warehouses, and you may be replacing these goods over the course of time with a number of replacement orders. So you can actually have multiple documents being created from one RMA. We can also create purchase returns back to suppliers if that's required. As a part of this, we could have created that return with the restocking fee. And what we can do is have that be calculated automatically. And we can do that as a percentage of the original cost or a fixed value, have that be pulled in automatically. And one of the key things behind RMA is the ability to have this one central point to look at all the documents associated with this return. So from here, what I can do is now go off and drill into any orders that are replacement orders that are associated with this, and any credit notes that have been processed as well. So here I'm just drilling into the actual order, which we could now convert into an invoice. What I might do now is create another RMA. We'll stick with our friend, Mr. Ronald Black. And this time I will do a repair. And as you notice, that repair template came through automatically. What you can do is associate specific templates with customers. And this is particularly important for companies that have larger customers out there who need very specific information being recorded when returns come through. So any Sage 300 users who are dealing with large national chain stores and the like, there are generally fixed procedures and information that are required around that returns process, which they then need to report back to their customers periodically. So what I can do now is do exactly the same thing. Let's go off and pick up another invoice. And this time I might just be repairing it, but what I want to do is keep a track of this item so that I know it's actually come back. What I'll do is still pick it up off an invoice, and we'll just deal with that first one over here. So I'll delete the second line. And what I can do is now on this RMA, I can now start adding additional lines. So I might want to add a miscellaneous charge line, and on that miscellaneous charge, I could then put a number of hours or whatever it happens to be. If it is, in this case, a chargeable repair. So let's go ahead and introduce a labor charge. And what I can do as well is start dealing with each line separately. So what I'll do is go back to this first line, and if I go into function key 9 and zoom this out, I'll just give you an idea of the level of flexibility I have here. On this line, I have information around the quantity involved and the like for this particular line item on this RMA. I can specify whether or not, when I'm creating a replacement order, whether it's to go onto the replacement order or not, and whether it should go onto that replacement order at a value or at $0 value. And similarly for credit notes and returns back to vendors, I've got this level of control. Now, all of this information I'm looking at here can be defaulted through via the template. So this isn't an area that people would typically go into, except in the cases of those more complex RMAs where they need to fine tune what happens against specific line items here. So what I can do is determine or specify whether there's a restocking fee or not. And down here, I can make changes in terms of the pricing, the status and workflow stage, the fault, what's wrong with this item. Let me say there's a damaged seal, repair agent. So if I'm sending this inventory out to an external repair agent, I can keep a track of exactly where it is at any point in time. Warranty information, I can record customer warranty information. I can record vendor warranty information as well if it is being returned back to the vendor. And what I can do too is include consumer information. I mentioned earlier on that the person returning or entity returning the goods might not be your customer, in which case you'd probably need to keep a track of their information. We can update shipping information, and what we can do as well is if we need to see the order number, credit note number, we need to drill into the different Sage 300 modules. We can do that over here. This is on the header level as well, but this is now giving you that information at the detailed line, because you may have multiple orders, credit notes, and the like that have been processed. So some of the other areas over here on the RMA, we've got your customer information, where you can, very similar to order entry here, update that information if it's needed. That restocking fee percentage, you can have that be calculated and have that determined at the template level, should that be required. vendor information for your purchase returns that are going through, and your optional fields as well. So just as you can with order entry, what we can do here is apply optional fields at different levels, at the header level and the detailed level, the item level, and the miscellaneous charge level as well. If the return is job related, so you have the project and job costing module, we can record information relating to that. And if you're dealing with multi-currency, what we can do is either use the original rate that was used on the original invoice, or you can override that to some other rate that you need. So this is one area where we are introducing something associated with a monetary value. But typically, what we're not doing is creating any transactions directly in Sage 300. That's all happening through order entry or through the purchase order module, not through RMA itself. So that gives you a feel for the actual data entry and what's involved with creating an RMA or a repair in this case. And how is that all set up? Well, what I'll do is go into the visual process area and into RMA, and we'll drill into the few of the key areas over here. So as I mentioned earlier on, what we have is RMA creating credit notes, replacement orders, and vendor return should it be required. And to speed up the data entry process, we make heavy use of templates. So I'll drill into the template area. And this is where you can create your different transaction types. So here we've got a repair, we have a return, we have a return with a restocking fee, and we have warranty repairs. Now, the data that I'm using for this presentation is our standard sample data, which is up on our website. So be sure to download this information if you would like to have a closer look at RMA. And also if you need to do a demo and the like, what we do have is a detailed demo script for each one of our modules, which is bundled up with the sample data. So we do have one for RMA, and it includes additional information around these templates that we're looking at here, along with transactions utilizing each one of these templates. So depending on your prospect or customer, they may or may not need specific templates, and if you are looking at running through RMA with them, you can then pick the transactions that best suit you and your customer, and you can run through those. So it's a great way of getting a feel for how the module works, and you've then got the ability to look under the hood, so to speak, once you've been through the transactions to see exactly how it's been set up. So over here, what we have is default header information that we can introduce into the RMA once we've chosen the appropriate template. And this is where we can specify then whether we want to incorporate automatic item restocking charges, what miscellaneous charge code we want to use, what the percentages should be. We can use this area to determine where the what information is going through to the replacement order, the credit note, the vendor return, and we can also specify what salesman needs to be attached to these RMAs. If it's a repair, you probably don't want the original salesperson attached to it, and this is where you can put in additional controls around the system. That's all at the header level. We can then at the item level, we can determine what we need. We have a number of different codes to describe the status, the workflow stage the RMA is at, the fault code, which you saw me entering a fault code on the one RMA that I was entering, and a repair agent. Now, these may not all be relevant to the user of RMA. So what you can do is allow blank codes if there are going to be instances where these codes are not required. And then the all-important whether these particular detail lines are to go through to credit notes and replacement orders and the like. So in the case of a warranty repair, which is what we're looking at over here, you wouldn't need a credit note at all. You're not sending anything back to the vendor, but what you would need is a replacement, an order line in order to draw down spare parts from inventory in order to reduce inventory and add these costs to the repair, but you don't want to have a value against these. You're not invoicing the customer for this, so that's why we've got checked over here, default 0 item replace value. We've got something very similar on the miscellaneous charge front, and where we can determine what we need. And then against each template, what we can do is have our auto numbering set up. So we're using a prefix of WAR over here to indicate that it's a warranty repair. We might be using RET as the prefix for standard returns. And you can have separate numbering sequences for all of these, along with additional controls. So we can here, for example, check quantity already credited. So you may need to want to make sure that you don't end up crediting a customer with more inventory than they originally purchased, and it'll go back in time to see exactly what had been purchased over a period of time. You might not want to default the original invoice quantity on the returns if you do pick up the return information from the original invoice, and that's what I did. I had to enter quantities being returned. I didn't have the original quantity default through. And that we do have other controls over here. And we also have controls over what RMA, what comments are to come through onto the new documents that are being created. So some other areas that we need to look at, and periodic processing is just something that you would do from time to time to clear down old documents. So in this case, completed RMAs or expired RMAs. So you might be creating RMAs as people call in saying they're going to return goods. Some of those customers may never return those goods. So what you can do is apply an expiry date to your RMA documents. And if nothing's happened by that point in time, you can get rid of them at that point. So I've been through RA templates, but what we can then do is do it at the customer level as well. We can associate customers with specific templates and then have specific message IDs or emails formats that can be used for those customers, along with email addresses for those customers for returns only. So let's just have a look at the rest of the setup area. And under options and processing, this is where we can also determine how we're to deal with serial numbers and lots, should you be using this area of Sage 300. And what we also do is have the ability to keep a track of exactly what product update you're on. So if you were to click on here, it will go off and establish whether or not there are additional patches or product updates that need to be installed. And we can have you being notified when new updates become available, should you need that too. So just there to, and we have this across all of our modules, just there to ensure that you are running on the latest at all times. I mentioned earlier on that we had item policies, and if we do use that, what you can do is specify that no credit notes for a particular item are allowed after a particular time. And what we can do as well is specify whether or not replacement orders are allowed. On the email front, what we can do is when we're sending out return instructions or RMA forms, what we can do is include email information along with merge codes to make them very specific and include information that is required or needs to be highlighted to the customer. And we do have a number of merge codes that can be utilized for that. These other icons over here allow you to create the different values for the different statuses, fault types, and the like, so they can be entered. And what we also have is an authorization area. And this is, we can then create user IDs, names, and passwords for people authorizing RMAs. Now, this is different to the user IDs that are being created by, utilized within Sage 300, because some of these users might not have their own user IDs in Sage 300, and hence we have a separate area to record this information. So that gives you a run through RMA and how we would enter transactions, new RMAs into the system, create additional documents at the appropriate time, and how we can go deeper into an individual RMA and change it should that be required. Also, how to set up the template codes and the like, which are key to ensuring that RMA does run as smoothly as possible for the operators. So before I open things for questions, what I'll do is just move across to Info Explorer and show you the type of thing that we can do with Info Explorer and with RMA. So over here, what I have is a dashboard showing me across the top what fault codes or problems I have with our various products and why they're being returned. And down the left-hand side here, I have the actual item. So it's a fault code analysis by item. Over here, I have RMAs by customer. And I'm looking at, I've grouped those by the different groups. So I've got a retail group and a wholesale group. And I can then go off and look at this information in more detail. And here I'm looking at an analysis by item. Here I'm looking at an analysis by customer. And I'm once again doing it by group, by customer. Here I'm showing the percentage of returns as a percentage of total sales to that customer to identify where we may have problem customers. And what I can do is look at more detail. So if I needed to see more detail over here, it would just be a question of dragging in the additional information that I need. And in this case, I've brought down the RMA number. And from there, I might want to go off and say, look at this first item over here. And what I can then do is drill through to the original RMA. So over here, I haven't logged into the system as yet. So I'm just logging in. And what it'll now do is pop up the associated RMA screen associated with that particular RMA number. And I can then have a look at that in the normal fashion. So this is one of the key things behind our Info Explorer module. Not only can you use it for budgeting and forecasting, you can enter data into it, which can then be updated. You can then use to update Sage 300, the general ledger area, if that's required, the inventory area for forecasts. But you can also drill into your underlying Sage 300 screen. So it becomes much more interactive and allows your BI environment to allow for the easy execution of dealing with issues that you detect whilst analyzing the data, analyzing the underlying data. So some of the other things I'm looking at here is looking at the information by fault code and item, and I do have another cube over here which is comparing returns against sales. So I could have a number of cubes across the top here, along with different views of each cube, dashboards and the like down the left-hand side. I can also graphically represent this information if need be. So one thing I will do quickly is show you this RMA by workflow, and this one's very useful for keeping a track of exactly where your RMAs are at any point in time. Here we're doing it by item, but once again, you might want to pull in the RMA number here as well, so we can then, if we do detect any issues within here, we can drill into the RMA to see exactly what is going on. So at this point, I might open the webinar up for any questions that may have come through. I don't see any questions at the moment, but if you do have any questions, if you could enter them into the question area, and we'll then endeavor them to answer them for you. Anne, have you seen any questions come through at all?
Yes, there's one question regarding components of a kit. Can you put components of a kit on the RMA? So the answer to that is yes, yes and no. So if you're using an RMA template, which makes the invoice number mandatory on the RMA, then all you can choose on your RMA is actually the kitted item, the full kit item, because you need to provide the invoice number. But what you can do from there is, so you could put the full kitted item that went out on the invoice on the RMA, but then what you can do from there is insert another row and then just add the component that's actually being returned. So the kit item, you would say, no, it's not going on a replacement order, no, it's not going on a credit note, but the component, you would say, yes, this is going on the credit note if that's what you're doing, or this is going on the replacement order if that's what you're doing, just replacing that component. But because your template has the rule that the invoice number is required on all your item rows, this is the case where you would need to use authorizations, and somebody would need to authorize that RMA by providing the correct password to overrule. So what authorizations do, it overrules the template rules just for that particular RMA. So the kit would be fine, the kit line would be fine because you'd have the associated invoice number, but the component line would have no associated invoice, and you would authorize it to say it's okay to put a component, an item on this RMA without the associated invoice number. So indirectly, yes, you can just return an individual component of a kit and still keep your rule about in RMAs being applied to an invoice.
Thank you. Are there any other questions at all?
I'm not seeing any at the moment.
All right. Well, while we're waiting for any other questions to come through, what I would encourage you to do is have a look, go up onto our website, download our sample data if you haven't already. All our modules are up there as well. So what you can do is once you've logged in as a business partner, you do have access to all our modules with serial numbers that will work for 30 days. You can then request activation codes, which will give you full copies of all our modules for internal and demonstration use. And up there, we also have quite an extensive knowledge base. We have a number of videos. We have a lot of good marketing material. We have training guides, other technical resources. We also have a large number of sample cubes. So for use with Info Explorer, including the two that I ran through briefly with you earlier on during the presentation. Anything else, Anne?
No, and I'm not seeing any further questions, so.
Okay. All right, well, in that case, I'll wrap up. I'd just like to thank you all very much for attending today. I do know that your time is extremely valuable, so we really do appreciate you spending this time with us. And if we can assist at all, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Thank you.